Chapter 11. Adam Swims the Way. The road led down into the valley of a winding river fringed with trees. Roger would have been glad to stop and bathe here, but Adam urged him on. "When we get to Guildford, we still have to hunt for Jenkin," he cried. "He might get out of town before we find him." "This is a good place to eat our dinner," said Roger. They lay down at the edge of the stream and plunged their heads into the cool water. Coming up dripping and refreshed, they opened their wallets and took out the bread and cheese and cold meat. In spite of his impatience, Adam found that it tasted good. When they had finished, Adam was eager to start right off again, but Roger stood looking down at him as if there was something he wanted to say. He wanted to tell his boy something about life and chance and the perils that beset beloved little dogs. But unable to find the words, he just stood there looking compassionate and helpless until Adam begged, "Let's hurry, Roger." Under St. Martha's Hill, the path divided. One branch went through the wood called Chantries and crossed the River Way by a ferry south of Guildford, and the other led across Marrow Downs and over sunny Pewley Hill to the town. This was the shortest way to Guildford. Adam's legs were tired as he stumped up the last rise in the chalky path from which, in spite of yesterday's rain, a fine white dust was rising. They had come nearly 12 miles uphill and down, and the fever of fear that drove him on had given him energy, but it had wearied him too. Suppose they got to Guildford and couldn't find Nick after all? Suppose Jenkin did not stop in Guildford, but took a road right out of it to the south, or the north, or the west? How would they know which road to follow? Guildford was a busy little town of stone and brick and timber clinging to the steep sides of the hill above the River Way. It had 3 churches and a castle where the Sheriff of Surrey lived, and many inns, shops, and houses. Its streets were thronged with pilgrims and merchants, both English and foreign, on their way from Southampton to London, or from Winchester to Canterbury, and back again. The White Friars had a house there, and the Grey Friars too. The white and grey gowns mingled on the narrow streets with the bright-coloured clothes of merchants and knights, and the green of the archers from the castle. Plenty of dogs were there in Guildford too, hunting dogs in pairs led by a huntsman, lap-dogs lolling over the arms of their mistresses, stray mongrels snapping at people's heels and dodging kicks with their tails tucked in. Now and then a spaniel trotting along busy and interested. Adam gathered fresh strength when he came into Guildford and saw all the people and the dogs. His eyes darted to right and left, and whenever he saw a spaniel, his heart rose in his chest and flapped back again. "How will we find him?" he said to Roger. "We can't stop everybody and ask." "We'll try the inns in the market-place, and then we'll go to the castle," said Roger. "It might be the Lord Sheriff would like some minstrelsy." "Let's go to the castle first," suggested Adam. "I'll bet Jenkin would go there first, when he's got Nick to show off." Though he was pinning his hopes on the castle, he did not fail to look around every corner along the way, and over every fence. He lagged quite a bit behind Roger, and was just going to run to catch up, when he glanced down a rather unpromising little lane, and saw something that brought him up short, tense in every fibre. It was just a glimpse, but it was unmistakable. There at the head of the lane was the wiry figure of the minstrel Jenkin, and bulky at the end of a leash, the sturdy, silky, floppy-eared dog Nick. The next instant they whisked out of sight behind some barrels and a wall. "There he is!" shouted Adam. "Roger, I see him!" Without waiting for an answer, off he shot down the lane, splashing through mud puddles and leaping over piles of trash. Roger, who had not been paying attention, turned his head, but not quickly enough to see where Adam had gone. As far as he was concerned, there were now 2 missing, a dog and a boy. Adam ran down the lane lickety-split and turned the corner where the minstrel had disappeared so fast that he had to hold on to a barrel as he went past to keep from swinging into the wall opposite. A narrow passage went between the back of one house and a barn and pigsty that belonged to another. No one was in sight. Adam sped down this passage and came out on a little back street with brick and timber houses that seemed to be trying to touch foreheads across it. A small girl in a yellow frock came walking along with a loaf of bread in her arms, looking red in the face and cross. "Little girl," Adam called, "have you seen a minstrel with a red spaniel?" "Yes, I have. He jumped up and licked my loaf of bread. I don't like dogs." "Where did he go?" She pointed to a gate between two houses. "Through there." Adam flung a thank you over his shoulder and burst through the wooden gate, letting it slam behind him. Stone steps with a mossy odor went steeply down between stone walls, and at the bottom he saw the river flowing. Down he went, bounding from step to step like a stone rolling down a bumpy hill, grazing the palms of his hands on the rough walls as he used them for brakes. When he reached the bottom, he stopped and looked both ways. To the right he saw a narrow street leading to Guildford High Street and the bridge. To the left, a little path followed the river past houses and under trees. In the distance, almost hidden by the low-hanging branches, he saw a hurrying figure and a little dog trotting behind on a leash. "Hi!" he shouted. "Hi, Jenkin!" He broke into a run. In the curve of the path he lost Jenkin for a minute, but when it straightened out again, there was Jenkin far ahead, running fast. Soon Adam could run no more. He had come too far that day. When he slowed down, Jenkin walked too. So Adam pushed his way along the path by the river, seeing nothing, thinking of nothing but Jenkin and the little dog ahead. Even after Jenkin gained on him and got out of sight entirely, Adam plodded on. He was surprised when he came suddenly on a boat landing and found a group of people waiting there for a ferry. "Have you seen a minstrel and a red spaniel?" he called. A man pointed out over the river. The flat-bottomed ferry boat, pulled by a man standing in the stern, was halfway across. In it were 5 or 6 people sitting very close together. One of them was a thin, dark, wiry man, and in his arms a red spaniel struggled to get free. "There he is," said the man who pointed. "Came rushing up here, elbowing better folk aside, and jumped into the boat when it was full already, and people waiting for the next trip. No manners. Friend of yours?" "Nick!" shouted Adam. "Nick!" There he was. There was Nick in that boat, and every minute the strip of water between them was widening. "That's my dog!" he cried. "He took my dog!" The people on the dock at once gathered around him with exclamations and questions. "When the ferry comes back, dearie," said a pleasant-faced woman, "you can have my place, and I'll wait for the next one." When the ferry came back, by that time Jenkin would be gone, and Nick with him. They were nearly to the other shore now. Adam took his harp from his shoulder and his bundle. He unfastened his belt and wallet and took off his shoes and piled them all together. "Watch them for me," he said to a friendly woman. Then he dived. When he came up and blew the water out of his face, he heard a babble of voices on the dock behind him, and saw the ferry-boat with Nick and Jenkin looming high in the water, far in front of him. Then he set himself to the job of swimming to the other side. The current was swifter than he expected, and his clothes were heavier. Furthermore, he had already had a long day, and he was tired. First his arms and legs felt like lead, then they felt like knives. Then his breath got short. He swallowed a tankard or more of river water and coughed it out of his eyes and nose and mouth. But he kept on kicking and splashing, and the next thing he knew, his knee hit something solid, and he found that he could stand up and wade the rest of the way. 5 or 6 staggering steps took him out onto the bank where he fell on his face and panted and dripped. Soon the thought of Nick jabbed him like an arrow. He sat up, wiped his wet face with his wet sleeve, shivered a little, and looked about him. The current had carried him downstream from the landing and the road. The ferry boat was already on its way back to the shore which he had left. He could see no one on this side, no one at all. He wrung the water out of his surcoat as best he could, and squeezed all the gay fluttering points into wisps. He had no shoes, but his cloth hose were thick, and they would serve till Roger followed with his things. The worst part, he found, as he ran along the river's edge to the little landing place, was the way his wet hose picked up mud and gravel in cakes. There was nobody at the landing place or the little house that stood in a garden beside it. Beyond the house was the forest. Adam looked at the narrow clay path that led straight into that thick wood of tall oaks and beech trees. Jenkin must have gone that way. There was no other way for him to go.